Baltimore Ravens fans have started questioning something that's been circulating within the fan base lately. Honestly, I don't fully agree with some of the opinions I've seen, which is exactly why I want to know what you think by the end of this video. Please be honest. I have a few important points to discuss with you today, but before we go on, make sure you've already hit that like button. Only do it if you're true Baltimore Ravens fans. And if you are, write in the comments. Go Ravens! Let's get to the Super Bowl. Now, let's get to the topic everyone is talking about. All this talk started because some Ravens fans began considering the possibility of Terrion Arnold coming to Baltimore. Hold on, let me explain. The main point here is crucial. It's not about the Ravens actively trying to sign him. There are no reports saying Baltimore is pursuing him, no indication that Eric DeCosta has made contact, and no evidence that negotiations are taking place. This all came up after fans started talking online about how it would be good for the Ravens to go after him. That alongside Nate, the Ravens would be unstoppable. I admit I'm not that keen on it. I think it would just disrupt the season. Here's the question I have for you. If Terrion Arnold were eventually cleared of all the legal issues surrounding him and the accusations against him proved false, should the Baltimore Ravens at least consider giving him a chance? Man, this has really divided the Ravens fan base. One group immediately says absolutely not. For them, the risk isn't worth it, regardless of how talented the player might be. They believe there are too many unknowns, too much unwanted attention, and too much uncertainty surrounding the situation. Even if everything eventually worked out in his favor legally, they feel the organization should simply move on and avoid bringing that type of storyline into the locker room. Then there's the other side. These fans aren't necessarily saying the Ravens should rush to sign him. Instead, they're asking whether Baltimore should at least evaluate the possibility if every legal concern completely disappeared. Their argument has very little to do with the current situation off the field and much more to do with football itself. If you've followed the Ravens for several years, you've probably heard one phrase repeated over and over again. You can never have enough cornerbacks. And honestly, that statement exists for a reason. Season after season, Baltimore has watched injuries pile up in the secondary. One week, the group looks incredibly deep, and then suddenly, multiple players are unavailable. Before you know it, the coaching staff is asking backups to play major snaps in critical games. Ravens fans know exactly how quickly that can happen. That's why depth at cornerback has always been viewed as one of the most valuable things a roster can have. You may not need every defensive back during Week 1, but by the time December and January arrive, having extra capable players often becomes the difference between surviving a playoff race and watching a promising season fall apart. That idea is what fuels this entire discussion. Supporters of the hypothetical move believe that if Terrion Arnold were completely cleared, Baltimore could potentially add another talented cornerback without making a major financial commitment. And that's another important point that keeps coming up. Nobody is talking about offering a massive contract. Nobody is suggesting a long-term deal with significant guarantees. The expectation among those discussing this possibility is actually the complete opposite. If a team were ever interested after everything had been resolved, the contract would likely be extremely affordable, carrying little financial risk and very few guaranteed dollars. Essentially, it would be an opportunity for the player to rebuild his career while giving the team flexibility if things didn't work out. From a purely business standpoint, some fans believe that kind of structure would make sense. But this is exactly where I start to disagree with some people. Yes, football is a business. Yes, teams across the NFL constantly evaluate talent whenever players become available. And yes, we've seen organizations throughout the league give players second opportunities under different circumstances. Nobody can deny that reality. However, football decisions are never made in a vacuum. Every move has consequences. Every signing affects the locker room. Every roster decision sends a message to the players already on the team. And that's why I think this conversation deserves more attention than simply saying, well, if he's available for cheap, why not? Because that's not how successful organizations operate. The Ravens have built one of the NFL's most respected cultures over many years. They consistently emphasize accountability, preparation, and putting the team first. Every player who walks into that building has to fit the environment that already exists. That's why adding talent has never been Baltimore's only priority. Finding the right fit has always mattered just as much. Even if a player has ability, the front office still has to ask difficult questions. Does he fit what we're building? Will he make the locker room stronger? Can we trust the situation moving forward? Those questions don't disappear simply because someone has talent. Now, some fans respond by pointing out another reality about the NFL. They argue that professional football has always been a league where teams are willing to take calculated risks if they believe the potential reward outweighs the downside. Whether people like it or not, history has shown that organizations across the league often evaluate players individually instead of automatically closing the door forever. That's simply how professional sports work. Again, though, this entire discussion depends on one massive condition. Everything would have to be completely resolved. Every legal issue would need to be behind him. The allegations would have to be addressed. Only then would this even become a football conversation instead of a legal one. And that distinction matters. Right now, everything remains hypothetical. That's something many people seem to forget whenever these debates start appearing on social media. Sometimes fans begin arguing as if the Ravens are already preparing an offer, when in reality, there hasn't been any indication that Baltimore is considering such a move. Instead, what we're really watching is the fan base debating philosophy. Should teams ever take chances in situations like this? Or should they simply move on and invest in players without any surrounding questions? Personally, I think that's a much more interesting conversation than discussing one specific player. Because eventually, every NFL franchise faces difficult roster decisions that force them to balance talent, risk, culture, public perception, and long-term planning. And the Ravens are certainly no exception. One thing that makes this conversation even more interesting is that it isn't really about whether Terrion Arnold was an elite player or not. Even the fans who brought up his name aren't claiming he would instantly transform Baltimore's defense. In fact, many people acknowledge that while he showed flashes of talent, he wasn't viewed as one of the league's top cornerbacks. That changes the discussion completely. If we're not talking about a guaranteed star, then what exactly would the Ravens be trying to accomplish? The answer, according to those who support the idea, is depth. Depth has always been one of Baltimore's greatest strengths. Championship-caliber teams aren't built with only 22 starters. They're built with players who can step into important roles when injuries happen, because injuries are part of every NFL season. No matter how talented your starting lineup looks in September, chances are it won't look exactly the same by December. Ravens fans have experienced that reality countless times. There have been